We want to turn now to retired four-star Navy Admiral James "Sandy" Winnefeld. The Admiral was Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff from 2011 to 2015.
He also served as Commander of the North American Aerospace Defense Command, the organization tasked with preventing air attacks against North America. And he joins us now from Washington. Admiral, thank you so much for joining us. I want to ask you first about something the President has tweeted. He tweeted that his first order, and this is what he tweeted this morning, that his first order was to renovate and modernize our nuclear arsenal. It is now more powerful than before. What do you make of that statement? He's been in office just over 200 days. What is the likelihood of him making our nuclear arsenal more powerful?
I would just say I'm very encouraged that the President remains committed to having a strong nuclear deterrent. As you correctly point out, there's not much a president can do in 200 days to make drastic improvements to the nuclear deterrent, but other than to show his commitment to continuing its modernization, which started before he came into office and will continue even after he leaves office. So it's encouraging that he's going to do it, but I don't know that he would necessarily need to claim personal success for that.
All right, Admiral, let's talk about the issue at hand, which is what North Korea's actual capabilities are. We heard Secretary Tillerson say he does not believe there is a, quote, imminent threat from North Korea. How seriously should and are U.S. officials taking the news overnight that the North is potentially considering a strike on Guam, a U.S. territory?
I think this is mostly rhetoric. I don't believe that they're seriously considering striking U.S. territory or any of our allies' territories. They know that that would spell the end of the regime. It's a rhetorical game. They made it very clear that they're angry about Andersen Air Force Base, which is the Air Force Base from which the flights originate that fly over the South Korean country to demonstrate our nuclear deterrent posture to North Korea. That irritates them, so it's natural that they would reach out. This is not the first time that North Korea has made threats, and it certainly won't be the last. So while we take North Korea very, very seriously enough that we put a THAAD battery in Guam several years ago, I share Secretary Tillerson's view that there's no imminent threat to Guam right now.
Our reporting suggests that North Korea is without two key technologies that are needed for a reliable nuclear weapon. Yet, I think many people will say their progression, even over the past year or so, has been quite alarming. Just how close are they to achieving, do you think, a weapon that can aim properly, can do what they're threatening to do?
Well, it's a little hard to tell, and we're looking through a glass darkly, although we have a terrific intelligence community that's focused on this matter. Making a successful intercontinental ballistic missile is not a trivial matter. There are at least three things that you have to be able to do. One, you have to be able to launch a missile that can fly that far, which they have demonstrated they can do. You also have to have a miniaturized nuclear weapon, which they claim they can do, and that has been recently discussed in the media, of course. The other, even possibly more difficult thing is to have a re-entry vehicle that can survive the vibration and the heat and the stress of re-entering the Earth's atmosphere at the kind of speeds that you have for an intercontinental ballistic missile as opposed to a shorter range missile. That's a real challenge, and I'm not sure that they've conquered that challenge, but they will.
Yeah.
They are, as you point out, making progress along this path, but this isn't a big wake-up call for us. We've been expecting this for quite some time and preparing for it.
You know, our polling shows that Americans are a little bit more disquieted about this story today. So let's talk about the U.S. defenses. And you mentioned the THAAD anti-missile system, which has been placed on Guam. Do we know that that is enough, that would be enough to repel an intercontinental ballistic missile tipped with a miniature nuclear warhead?
Well, first of all, a missile that would fly towards Guam is not technically an intercontinental ballistic missile. It's more of a medium-range ballistic missile, which the THAAD is designed to counter. It's a very good system. It's had a tremendous success rate in testing, and we put it in Guam for a purpose, and that specifically was to defend against the North Korean ballistic missile threat. We also have other ballistic missile capability, defense capability. We're co-developing with Japan something called the SM-3 Block 2A, which is a very capable anti-ballistic missile that we will use both in the U.S. U.S. Navy and that Japan will use. And then finally, the outermost ring really is our national ballistic missile defenses, the ground-based interceptors that are based in Alaska and at Vandenberg Air Force Base. As I mentioned earlier on the morning show, we recently tested that system for the very first time against a true intercontinental ballistic missile of the type that North Korea is developing, and it performed with flying colors. There are previous tests of that system that have not done as well. Some have done well, some have not, because it was a developmental program. We shouldn't hold that against the program. It's a very capable missile, and I believe that North Korea is taking it seriously as a deterrent.
Admiral, you know, when Secretary of State Rex Tillerson spoke earlier today, he supported the president's use of the phrasing and bringing the fire and the fury, but he has also been very supportive of diplomacy. And one of the other things that he said earlier today was that you don't want to back someone into a corner without a way out. I'm wondering what you think of this sort of, for some people, inflammatory language, whether or not that's backing North Korea into a corner.
Well, I think it is debatable as to whether the inflammatory rhetoric is, as Secretary Tillerson said, the only thing that North Korea understands, or whether we should act as a great power and have our rhetoric be a little bit more measured. And what I mean by measured is expressing very clearly that if North Korea executes any of the many different threats, cyber threats and the like, that they have articulated, that we would respond proportionally under international law. And in the case of a nuclear weapon, that would probably be an overwhelming response. But I think a calm and great power-like set of rhetoric is probably more useful to us right now.
Admiral James Winnefeld, thanks so much for your terrific insights.
Pleasure.